Hello and welcome to our first ever official recording of the Unity Worldwide Tech Team call. My name is Reverend John Marie Schweitzer. I'm the chair of the Unity UWM Tech Team, and I'm very excited that we have decided to take this step to record our meetings for the most part, to discuss any technological or technical issues that we have in our ministries, and help each other to find solutions. And with that being said, let us just take a moment in prayer, as we often like to do, giving us an opportunity to breathe into this moment, settling down, leaving the busy world behind us, and becoming really present in the here and now, allowing the expertise that we bring to this team, the wisdom that we have gained over the many years that we have served in this area and in this capacity, just to come forth as we help each other to bring our Unity ministries into this millennia and into this new era of being technologically advanced and making ourselves available to so many more than we have ever been able to. In gratitude, as we move into this meeting, we appreciate each other for who we are, what we bring to the table, and respect each other for our experiences that we have had and will share with each other. And so it is. Amen. All right, so today's topic is, who remembers?
PTZ cameras.
Owen, my man. Excellent, PTZ cameras. And the one who inspired this topic is not even here. So hopefully, Sean, if you watch this recording, you will gain something out of it, but we're not going to skip like we did last time. We're going into this topic. So show of hands, who has already experience with PTZ cameras? Ron has. I know Eldon and Lane and I have. No one else. Okay. So then, got to be careful. Who would like to know more about PTZ cameras? Okay, so we do have some. Cheryl and Randy are interested, on top of all of us, and Owen too. I think, Owen, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. All right. Well, Ron, Eldon, Lane, since you guys, or we are the ones who have experience, did you just want to share a little bit what PTZ cameras are and how you use them in your ministry? Don't speak all at once. Yes, go ahead, Ron.
So, yeah, I'm Ron Holdaway from Unity of Panama City in Panama City, Florida. So our service is live streamed, and we live stream on Facebook, and not to any other platform. And then we do record the meditation and the talk, whoever's doing the talk, and post that on YouTube later. So, and I'm not sure why I keep doing that, but I just have. So we've got one PTZ camera. I can't even tell you the manufacturer of it. It's it is an off-brand. The dealer that the VMix dealer that I bought this from, that we bought it from, had this on a special, and last year it was a so we bought it last year when we were starting to get online. So it allows us to, I mount the camera toward the back of we're very small. I mount the camera on a platform on a column in the back of what we call the sanctuary. And that's the only camera we have in the service, just the one camera that we're using. I have another camera that can be a group shot, but we haven't used it that much. It can go, but it's just a camcorder. But the reason for doing that was so I could mount the camera in the back and then be able to remote control it. And again, our services are pretty simple. So for the most part, we use do a wide zoom of where the speakers and we have a very small music group. We can usually leave the camera alone. We control the camera with the remote, which is a little challenging. So I would like to know if somebody's using, oh, by the way, we use NDI for that as well. So we NDI that into the vMix, and also have a separate PC for our slides during the service slides. And that is an NDI connection into vMix as well.
Let me just stop real quick, because we might have some who don't even know what PTZ cameras are. Okay. Ron, why don't you explain to us what was PTZ camera? What is it? Not what PTZ necessarily stands for, but what is it?
Well, pan, tilt, and zoom is what it stands for.
Oh, look at that. You even know that. Perfect.
Pan, tilt, and zoom. But it allows us to, the main thing is the remote, the easy remote control, easily remote controlled, so we can mount it in the back. Don't have to climb up to we don't have to set it in a tripod, which is out of the way, which is what we were doing before this. So it was just, I got this from talking with the dealer, the vMix dealer that we were dealing with.
And I'm just going to quickly show the slide that we used during the tech conference, just so everyone gets a visual how PTZ cameras often look like. Does this look like yours, Ron?
Very similar,
yeah. So that's the one that we use at Unity Fort Worth, which is my home ministry, and also Eldon's and Lane's. We got the PTZ optics. There's a 20X here. We actually have the 30X, costs a little bit more, but that's how they look like. So they can tilt and pan and do a whole bunch of stuff. Just to give you that visual for those who are curious. Before we go to Randy, who has his hand raised, Ron, can you explain what NDI is?
Network device interface. I can.
You know all your acronyms.
I just know how it works. It works over the Ethernet network in our small. So I put in a new switch, an Ethernet switch, and it allows the camera to be plugged in directly as a device on the Ethernet. And it's powered. It's PoE, power over Ethernet. So didn't have to run a separate, since it's mounted on this column, didn't have to run a separate power line for it.
Yeah, because many of those PTZ cameras come also with a serial connection, and then you can control it with serial. Mm-hmm. But using NDI, the NDI, it's a protocol that was developed specifically to communicate between AV. I think it started out for cameras specifically, and there's software that can easily just remote control any NDI compatible camera. So it's a really good protocol, but just for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, so that was a great description there, Ron.
Yeah.
Randy, just if you have a question, and then going back to Ron, if there's anything else, go ahead, Randy.
Oh, that's good.
Well, yeah, I actually wanted to find out from Ron. When in working with that dealer that you bought the PTZ from, you realize that vMix has the ability to has PTZ controls built in. Mm-hmm. Did they not sell you a camera that, while supports NDI, that wasn't controlled by vMix?
There's an issue with that. We did talk about it. I can't remember what it was, Randy. I can't remember whether it was the level of the vMix that I purchased would have had to upgrade, and he didn't recommend it at the time. He didn't recommend it. That may be different now, but I haven't followed back up with that. Okay. It is an issue. My question about, I would like to get a remote, like a joystick or some way or other to control the PTZ camera, but the cheapest one I've been able somewhere around $300, $350.
That's the serial one. Yeah, I want to talk about joystick just in a minute. Randy, why don't you explain us in a sentence or two what vMix is?
vMix is a software video production system, everything from a switch to you can have 3 simultaneous online streams, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, a variety of different applications. Also, depending on the version of vMix that you do purchase, you can have over 1,000 inputs. We're running about 48 inputs right now with a 5-camera set. 4 of those inputs are running NDI. 3 of them are we're using Mevo starts that is similar to has similar PTZ capabilities, but not as functional. And running over the NDI makes it extremely helpful. And just until about 2 weeks ago, we were running a 1 each cell phone that we had mounted behind the musicians and shooting them on a cell phone, running NDI. That was great until the screen decided to pop off.
So vMix basically is just your center of your AV operation. There's other products. Owen uses Wirecast. Eldon, Lane, and we decided to go with ProPresenter. So there's different brands out there that help you bring all your inputs together and manage it, mix it with your slides and things like that. And then obviously you can then attach a PTZ camera or a different camera. Just for those, if you're not familiar, I always want to make sure when we throw out our acronyms or brands that, you know, for those who are watching this for the first time, I said, oh my God, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. So thank you for that explanation. Cheryl, you have a question.
Yes, I do. I have 2 questions. One, Ron, you mentioned that you couldn't mount your camera on a tripod and still get the pan, tilt, and zoom. We have the same camera, and I wondered what the issue was with that. And then I wondered if vMix is like OBS. So those are my 2 questions.
Yeah, OBS is similar to vMix. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the issue with the tripod, putting the camera on the tripod, it will work on the tripod, and I have done that for a couple things, but the tripod always gets in the way. It's not that it won't work, it's just the logistics of the tripod getting in the way.
Also, we have it mounted on the wall. We have a large sanctuary. So if you get a bracket, a simple 90-degree bracket, the PTZ Optics has their, but you can buy them anywhere really. It really helps to have certain height, rather than being on a tripod, maybe a little bit too low. Although Owen is our DIY specialist when it comes to setting stuff up with 2x4s and 4x4s and posts and things like that. He's a one-man show in his ministry. I do not recommend that to anyone. It's a heart attack in the making, in my opinion. So that may be a consideration. That's, I think, where the biggest advantage of a PTZ camera is you can actually tuck it out of the way because you have that range and flexibility to position it, especially when you have 2 cameras, as we have in our case. And OBS is the open source version for those who like open source or like to tinker around with it. And rather than purchasing vMix or ProPresenter or Wirecast, OBS will be the way to go. Used to be, what I heard, very difficult and had lots of issues, but that was years ago, so maybe a lot better now. So many who started with OBS a few years ago, I heard, they gave up and just bought vMix or one of the other ones and said, I'm not going to deal with the issues. You have to be pretty tech savvy to handle OBS with all the different versions and recompiling and things like that, is my understanding. All right, let's move over to Eldon and Lane and see what you have to contribute to PTZ.
Well, our PTZ cameras at Unity Fort Worth, we have 2, and the way our sanctuary is set up, the platform is raised enough so that we were able to put our rear center PTZ camera and line it up eye to eye with Jean-Marie. So he was the standard we used. So that's the height it is on the back wall. And then about 30 degrees off to the side of the sanctuary is where we have our second camera. And in our case, we were able to use the HDMI for the rear camera because it's within 25 feet of our switcher. For the side camera, it's a little farther. So there we're using the SDI output of the camera and then run into a SDI to HDMI converter to go into our switcher. And for controlling the cameras, we're using the PTZ optics program for the iPad or iPhone. And that seems to work pretty well. We just use that for our whoever's volunteering to do the cameras to control the cameras.
And how do we how do we remote control it?
It's remote through the LAN cabling. It's
NDI again.
No, not NDI. It's just LAN.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we are using the power over Ethernet, but the controller just comes in to our wireless router, and from there it goes off to the cameras.
Okay, so that will be an alternative if you don't want to go down the NDI route.
And that was what PTZ Optics recommended because I think the program was $10 and it works real well on the iPad.
And I think when we first looked at, because we have NDI capable cameras, right? Ours are the 30 times zoom NDI compatible, but I think we had a lag issue, didn't we?
We never really tried it.
Okay.
From what I read, that it's just always safer if you're using a hardwired camera. And as you start adding NDI, also you start running into maybe a little more lag because of bandwidth issues on your network. So, with just a few cameras on NDI, I think it would be fine, but it's just not something that we have the capability. We just haven't used it.
So let me ask let me ask Ron and you, Eldon and Lane, one thing, we have these remote cameras, and when we first, Eldon and I were the ones who kind of like designed the system at very early on. Lane joined us later, just adding especially her knowledge with ProPresenter to the team. But when we first looked at what cameras to choose and went with PTZ Optics, our idea was that we would use the remote a lot more. What's the use case that we have right now, Eldon?
For the remote.
What are we doing now? We're not really using, my point is we're not really using the remote capability live. Right.
Maybe I'm not clear what you
we
mean.
have I understand the question, so I'll answer. We have two sets of basically presets. Before service, we have like a camera plan that we update every week, depending on how the service is planned to go. And before service, we compose a lot of our shots while we're off camera. And that saves us because the app is not, it takes a very like delicate touch to move it smoothly back and forth. So we tend to do those adjustments off camera. So we do most of our composing before the service starts. And then during the message, when Jean-Marie is moving around, we do pan back and forth during that time. And then we always have like a safety shot in case there's a little, in case he wanders out of frame, and then we can just switch to that quickly.
Yeah.
So that's how we're using.
That really was my point. When it's a significant investment, even if you get we have a relatively cheap remote camera, a PTZ camera. The ones that are used like in professional settings are $5,000 and $6,000 rather than $2,000, right? And there's cheaper ones even, but the cheaper ones have the issue that the remote function itself is not as smooth as you want it to be. even if you have a good joystick, which I want to talk about in a minute too, it's still very hard because the camera, the sensors and the gears and all that are not as high quality as it is with more expensive cameras, where you can do a really nice slow zoom, which is what you really want to have the best effect. So what ends up happening because of that quality issue is that the remote control piece is used to set up cameras off camera, to set up the next shot, which is obviously an advantage. And then because I'm a walker, I challenge my tech team once in a while to just follow me. But again, it's relatively hard. That really was the point that I was trying to make. And I'm curious what your experience is, Ron.
Very, very similar. We don't move the camera very much. I've got one operator that came from a TV broadcasting. He can adjust it and do it.
Yeah.
But nobody else can really do that. I'd rather them not do it. We go, if they lose, if the speaker goes off frame, I've got an image that they can pop up in the live stream and while we move the camera. So ours is very simple. I keep it simple on purpose, and but we don't use the remote as much as I thought we would. Not knowing really.
That's definitely our experience too. And I just want everyone who's watching this or listening, even who is here today, to know that it's considerable. That might be your experience too. That you think, oh, great, I'm going to get a remote camera. You make a large investment, $2,000, $2,500, and then only to see you're really not using it the way you thought you would. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy it, because there's still a lot of flexibility you get. For example, we don't need multiple camera operators. We have one camera operator who uses the iPad. We have lots of presets. You can preset the cameras. It's really the issue of finding volunteers to operate each camera doesn't really exist. So that's probably one of the considerations you want to look at for sure. Well, let me, before we talk about joysticks, let me open up for a couple of questions. Those of you who are interested in learning more about PTZ cameras, do you have any questions for Ron, Eldon, Lane?
I'd just like to add that some time ago, we visited my mother-in-law in Denver, and she has a church that has been doing live streaming for about a year and a half, and they found some inexpensive PTZ cameras and an inexpensive joystick, and so I was interested in seeing what their situation was. And their broadcasts are very clear and sharp. They don't do much camera movement during the broadcast, but they let me play with their gear before the service started. And I was using the joystick, and the panning is on their equipment seems to be very smooth. It was something that I could control with the joystick. I always like to have my hands on something, and the video quality looked good. And so I just I have a link in our chat there of what equipment they're using. I haven't used it myself. I haven't done anything except look at it there and look at the work that they've done online. And I also included the name of their church and how to go.
I don't see it in the chat, and no one will see the chat in the recording. So just give us the name of the church.
Okay, let me go back and.
Okay, while you do that, just you gather the specs, and I'll move over to Cheryl and then Randy. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about the presets that you guys were talking about. When you implement one of those presets, do the cameras automatically go to that place? Or help me understand what you're talking about when you say you've got some presets, so that if Jean-Marie goes out of frame or whatever, it goes to the presets.
So the presets are buttons on the app. And when you press them, then the camera adjusts over to that location. But you see the transition of that. So we normally do those transitions outside of what the live camera is.
So when you say it does the transition, so the camera's not moving for people to see that, or I guess I'm trying to
They
understand.
they would be able to see it if we made it our primary camera at that moment. So if our switcher was set to that camera, they would be able to see the transition.
So
we
you
tend
change.
to do them. We tend to switch cameras and then do them
Okay.
where the audience can't see.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
That's the advantage of having two cameras.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One
Randy,
thing,
you hold on a sec. Oh, go ahead, Eld.
I was just going to say that one thing with the controller we've got, we have, I can't remember how many presets we can set up, but really you just kind of pan and tilt your camera, zoom it to where you want it, and just tell it to save that setting like in number 1, and you can name it, or number 2, and you can name it. So we get a general setting. And then like when Jean-Marie wanders around a little, whoever's doing the camera has to just use the little controller to follow him, back and forth. Another thing that we use quite a bit because we set up the shots for, say, our music team. The other day we had 4 microphones. So you set it up for the wide shot to get everyone at the 4 mics. But then we had a song where only 2 singers came up. So that's where it was really handy to be able to just quickly zoom into those 2 and center it. So the PTZ camera just makes it really easy for one person to control all this stuff that's changing during the service.
And mind you, we have a 30x optical camera because we have a large sanctuary. We have about 60 feet to cover from the camera to the stage. And we wanted to be able to capture, and the 20x would have been fine for just people, but we are now capable of even having something on a stand in the middle of the stage and get a really good close-up of that with the 30x. So one of the things you need to do is you need to look at your sanctuary and look at what kind of optical zoom you want, because you can save some money by saying, yeah, I never use the 30x, the 20x is just going to be fine. Owen, do you have the data for us?
Yeah, in this, well, I have the equipment and I don't have the name of the church, but
we really care about the equipment because we're the tech team, right? Who cares?
Okay, yes. Okay, so it's AVKAN is the camera, AVCAN, and it's 20 time PTZ camera. It's in the $500 range, and the controller is HS.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Yes, exactly. That's it.
So $1,100 if you want the NDI capabilities. Oh, that's ADA. It's not FCAN.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's not it.
Just to give you an idea, these are the more professional ones, and we're totally in a different price range. So let's see. What did you say? AFCAN?
Let me go back and find it here.
I had it on Zoom here. Hold on.
Oh, shoot.
There it is, our controller.
That's the controller.
Yeah, there it is.
It's around 100 and something, or 200 something.
It was at the top. It was at the top of the page in the middle, right there. Yeah.
There you go, 549.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah. So that might be something to consider as a starting point. That's even a 20 NDI here, right? You can go even cheaper if you say, I don't need NDI. 20X might be, if you have not a large sanctuary as we have, 20X might be just fine. So it's worthwhile looking at it. All right, excellent. So that's always good to know.
Mhm.
I wish we didn't have to spend how much did we spend? Like $2,500 for the 30X NDI, right?
At that
Spent
time,
quite a bit.
yeah, a little over 2000, 22 or 3 maybe.
And if if $500 spent is much easier to accomplish for most of our churches, and then you can play around with it and see how it goes, right? So let's talk about controllers and joysticks real quick. You just saw before I pulled it up, otherwise you could just go back in the recording. I pulled up the FCAN controller, which had the joystick, which really is the way to go, in my opinion. It's because you get that fine motoring skill. You can really control your camera the best way with that physical joystick. And what the joystick also does, you can not only do all the motions around the axis, but you have the wheel, and you can do it at the same time. You can also control the zoom, or even depending on how your setting is, the focus. Okay, so some of the more experienced camera people, they don't do autofocus. They actually zoom in and focus at the same time. Zoom in, pan, focus, all with one hand movement. And that's not something, I learned all this years ago on a professional TV camera, how to do it all with one hand in one motion. Takes a few weeks or a few months to get used to it, but you can train someone to do that. And it's much, much easier than doing it on an iPad, I believe. But these things can get pricey. So $549 was the FCAN one. The PTZ version is the $300 that Ron mentioned. That's for the serial one. The one that runs over the Ethernet is $900. But I think, Eldon, you said they came out with a new version, right? So they might gotten a bit cheaper.
Well, I know it's a new serial one it's around
A new
$300,
serial one?
but they've added a lot of features. You can I don't know what all they've changed, because I've never really looked at one before, but I do know that controller makes it easy. You can control a lot of your camera functions. So you can change the iris, and you can either select auto focus or not. There's just a lot of things that you can do with that little controller.
The downside, of course, of serial is you need to run each camera separately to the controller. Whereas if you already have your cameras connected to either NDI or in the network, then all you need to do with the Ethernet joystick is to just plug it in, and then you have access immediately. So you don't need to run any wires. Although I think that the serial cables, what's the restriction on length there? I don't think it's critical, right?
It's not too bad. You actually daisy chain them, I think, from camera to camera.
Oh yeah, you daisy chain them. Yeah, that's
and
right.
Also the delay is a lot short. You get a lot more instant response with the serial than you do with the over the network.
Yeah, so there's less
of
of a lag time with the serial. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cheaper, less of a lag time. You can daisy chain. For those who don't know what that means, is daisy chaining just means you can have one camera connecting to the other camera, and then take from that camera to the controller. You don't have to run it separately individually. You can just kind of like put it in series in that way. And so that cuts down on some of the wiring cost. All right, any other questions? I think we pretty covered it well. I hope Sean will be happy.
Yeah.
Anything else that anyone wanted to say who has experience with the PTZ cameras?
There is one thing that I don't remember the name, but it's on I think on eBay you can buy them, maybe Amazon. But the company that makes the cameras for PTZ Optics is now selling their version of that. I don't know how the software matches up, but supposedly the quality is the same. and they're about half the price of the PTZ optics.
Industrial manufacturing?
No, I had the name. I may have actually sent to Owen at one time, but I can't remember. Right now, I can't remember what it is, but they're looking at it.
Crunchbase. I'm just looking online so we can just let everyone know.
Yeah.
Who makes, Randy, you have a question?
Well, I wanted to know what manufacturer that Eldon was talking about. I know we don't get into specifics on recommending products.
Yeah.
Our ministry is going to be moving shortly to a new facility, and the focal distance right now, we're running about 40 feet between the sound booth, tech booth, and the stage. We're moving to a place where it's narrow and 72 feet. So I appreciate the comments about the 30X versus the 20X, because that will certainly play into things. But I'm also interested, going back to the not promoting particular devices. Are there devices that those who are using PTC have experienced before that we might not want to investigate those particular models, or the manufacturers that, I'm not saying we don't want to buy them or recommend them, but it's kind of the other side of that. Is there anything that I need to be cautious of, if anyone has anything to share on that?
Yeah, anyone?
So the PTZ camera that I bought was $950, and so I was told that it's I don't know if it's Japanese or Chinese. I can't even remember the name unless I'm sitting there looking at it. The name is not on the camera. It's barely on the user's manual. So, but you can't. So there's so many knockoff brands of PTZ optics. But I was told that they're made on the same assembly line as PTZ optics. Who knows if that's the truth? So just to get into it, I mean, this was our first, getting into it and into streaming. So I bought it. So far, so good. I don't know I don't know longevity or if it'll last or anything. So I couldn't help you with that, Randy.
I appreciate it. vMix actually on their tech site has a listing of which PTZ cameras by manufacturer and the models that are supported through vMix with the actual controllers. I'm not necessarily committed to that, but I just wanted to see. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I did Google real quick. Here's the answer. PTZ cameras are produced in China by Telecam, but that's more of a general. So that could be a manufacturer. It's not necessarily the one that does PTZ optics, but you can just Google the thing and find the brand. There's always two sides, as you know, to things. There's the hardware side. And even if the hardware is fine, like if you buy from the manufacturer directly who does the hardware, if the software doesn't fit, you might run into those problems too, which again, even though NDI may have a lag problem, but if you get an NDI camera, then you're actually removing yourself from proprietary software. You're a lot more flexible when you go with NDI. That's where I see the advantage, because then you're going through a standard protocol and you're not so much dependent on proprietary software that the manufacturer may provide. I'll give Vivian a shot there. Vivian, you had your hands up.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to share that we have two PTC cameras. One is on the side, the right side of the podium, and one is in the back. And I remember once before sharing, I guess, a video, and there's a window behind the minister, so that what I've started doing now is using the PTC camera in the back to focus on the person and to kind of exclude the window, because the one from the side, you can't do that. But I have started taking the one from the side and started panning the audience, so that now instead of getting the backs of everyone's head, people on the Zoom are like, "Oh my goodness, I saw so and so's face." Da, da, da. So,
Yeah, if you have issues, we talked about this a couple of months ago, Vivian, right? You
And it
really need
helps.
to turn off the autofocus option, because that's really where the thing is. Some of these modern cameras have multiple focal points. Sometimes, 4, 5, 6, 9, 11, who knows? And then if they pick up in one of those focus points that high brightness of the window, it's going to be it's the lightness. It's not so much the focus, but the focus can be, but the brightness then will be wrong, right? Well, you can often turn these things off. You can actually manually set it, which takes a little bit more of an effort. But if you have a set environment like a sanctuary, it's actually possible, especially with those presets, to say, if I have this kind of wide shot that includes the video, the window, then I want these types of settings. So I will probably look whether or not you can manually control some of the brightness and the focus settings in your presets, just as a tip. Yeah. Randy? Then you
Thanks.
have your hand up still.
I
I got to close soon, so.
I do have a quick comment about long, narrow rooms. Unity of San Francisco had a long, narrow room. I think they're going into a new facility now. But what they did initially was the traditional way. They had the platform at the end of the room, and everybody lined up. And then they decided to do it sideways and have the platform in the middle, and have people lined up on either side. And what they did for their slides is they put 2 monitors, one on either side of the platform, facing angled out so that the people on either side could see it. And then they had a confidence monitor on the wall in front of them, and the cameras and the equipment over on that wall. And it actually worked out really well. It gave people a sense of being part of a community, because they were not only looking at the platform, but they were looking at each other. And just throwing that out there, it worked for them.
All right, so that concludes today's meeting on PTZ cameras. Vivian, did you have something else you wanted to add? I didn't want to cut you off. You're all good? Okay, I think that was a great discussion. Thanks everyone for what?
Oh, I just want to say, I think
Just very quick, because I got to stop here. So
I think that might have been SMTAV cameras that I had been looking at.
Well, we all know how to use Google. So
Amazon.
Okay. All right. So what's the topic for next month? What are we going to talk about? Cheryl?
How about recording audio or music?
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, not necessarily recording, but live streaming, because a lot of times what you can live stream as far as just audio doesn't work for music, because the quality is.
Are you not separately mixing your live stream?
That's what I need to know. We're not doing live streaming right now, so I'm trying to get an understanding of what we actually need to do.
Yeah, everyone else okay with diving back into audio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Owen has a lot to say about that. He's the
Yes.
Great topic. I think we talked about it before, but why not bring it back up so we have a recording of it? It's one of the bigger issues, because audio is more important than video, right? So I'm sure that will help many of us to have that discussion. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Spread the news about this team. Invite anyone. The only requirement really is you have to be part of a Unity church, and you have to be involved somehow in technology. Okay, so that you don't go, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, that you can follow along a little bit at least, right? But you also don't have to be an expert. This is really designed to for a wider range as much as we can make it happen. And so have a wonderful month, and we'll see you soon.